course.
It's going to be on Twitch forever, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to bring up like the Twitch chat or?
I have it on my computer.
All right, I have it here too.
Yeah, so it depends.
Can we bring up the thing just so I know what we look like? I have a hard time talking and not.
Oh, sure.
Right on the
Oh,
left.
you mean
Yeah.
this one? Or?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah, so-
hi.
Hey. Hey, everybody. So let's just go around the table real quick because not everyone here was for the first roundtable. So hi, I'm Sam Longcoat, Community Manager.
I'm Parker Davis, Executive Producer.
I'm Justin Pappas, I'm Senior Level Designer.
I'm Will Texera, Lead Engineer.
Chris Siegel, Senior Designer.
Okay, and thanks again for everyone who could join us. We're going to be taking live questions and submitted questions from the forums and from the Google forum. So last developer roundtable, we talked about combat, stealth, and magic with Joe, Tim, and Chris, who's here again. Today we're actually going to mostly be looking at questions that you submitted because last time we didn't have as much time. So does anyone have live questions to start? We want to prioritize you. I saw a few people in the chat already. Let me bring this up. I can't see. I like how they're just, oh God, is my thing not even in?
You could probably put that window to the left side.
That window?
Yeah, like if you,
Like this?
yeah, or,
Well, I don't
yep.
know how to, I don't know how to do it.
That works, and then you can just drag that all the way to the right end.
Why can't I hear myself?
Yes. Cheers. Seventh key. Greetings all.
Nice
Ah,
to meet
there
all
we go.
of you.
It's
Well,
pretty good. There we go.
Don has one, but he's AFK.
Okay, great. You know what?
Bio breaks already.
Yeah, I just realized that I could also just give some quick updates because a few of you haven't really checked in since our last roundtable, and a lot has happened. So the first thing is you might notice that the setup is quite different from our first roundtable. It's because we're in our new office.
We're real boys. Check out this cool table.
It has a split in the middle.
Which is kind of terrible for gaming, we figured out, but it's really good for wires.
So yes, we'll have an office video coming out in the next 2 months or so. We'll see. Some of you who aren't aware, we do have a publisher. We're being published by 505 Games, who are making Indivisible. They made they published Brother Tale of Two Sons, Abzu, Terraria, Payday 2. For those of you asking about when the game is coming out, we're aiming for the second half of 2018. And remember to check your emails because especially now, you should be getting some reward questions. Oop, I thought I heard something. No. And then the next newsletter is coming out this month, hopefully before the holidays. So there's a lot of reasons to check your email and keep updated with us. Slightly
And
more.
tell your friends.
If possible. All right, if no one has live questions, we can start from some of the submitted questions. Who do we want to start with? Bring it up right now. What do you guys want to start with?
You want to start with the first one?
Sure. So the first question was submitted through our survey. It says, related to release, what goes into the build that distinguishes pre-alpha from alpha? What can we expect to see differently when the alpha build is released?
So I can take this one. I'll give you a technical definition of alpha. I'll keep it concise. It's basically we're all in. All the features and systems are in. Ideally, all the content is in and represented in some form or fashion. In a pre-alpha build, it's still very much midstream. It's a work in progress. There are systems that are still half-baked and getting into the game. So as we get to alpha, it's still unpolished, still a lot of fine-tuning and balancing to be done. Lots of revision and iteration, especially as we playtest more and more. When we're delivering a pre-alpha build, it's more of a pure development build. We're in development. So, you can expect to see most all of the features represented in some fashion in an alpha build.
I think from a developer's point of view, pre-alpha, even riding up to alpha it works. And that's about as far as you go. And it's buggy and it's not tuned, but it works, right? And so it's at least in a place where you can start to get an inkling of how it's going to interact with all the other systems that we have, and if it's, any semblance of fun or not, right? And you start seeing where some of the constraints that we're going to have to put on some of this stuff. Because usually when we put things in, at least on the system sides, is that we do it really wide open. We don't even think about, like, how do we marginalize this, so it's not overpowered or world ending. Anybody who's played with our fire knows that you can pretty much burn down the level, because, again, we didn't put any constraints in on what will or will not burn and be destroyed. If it's wood, it burns, and that's about as far as we took the system at this point. Now comes the, okay, well, this should burn only this much, and these things should be able to be burned and destroyed. So there's like all that deeper thought comes in between alpha and beta.
We have a follow-up question in the chat, actually. Will the alpha build be of the same area or any idea yet?
It's a new area.
New area, okay.
Yeah, they haven't seen.
I'm not
New
sure,
stuff.
Don't even name drop.
No.
but I can tell you that we've got some pretty nice looking areas ready to show, hopefully soon. At the moment, I'm working on 3 levels at once, and I don't want to say too much, but don't worry, there's
So
lots,
much we want to say.
lots coming.
Welcome to indie development.
Okay, I see someone has already asked, is there an update you can offer on Mac OS and Linux support?
Yes.
This is a Will question.
I'm trying to build that this week. It's not as easy as a checkbox. There's lots of stuff that get in the way, such as errors and things that happen once the build's happening. I admit it. So I have my home machine is doing the builds and just going off on that. And part of the problem with the Mac versus Linux and all that is yeah, Unity does the multi-platform just fine, but once you have a lot of packages that you're including from other developers, such as like all these extra asset store packages, those tend to not work so well with the different platforms, and that can cause errors even in the compile process. So that's something I'm actively working on this week.
So Will has you covered. We know. It'll happen, don't worry. Don submitted a question. How interactive will the elements be? Can we electrocute water? Will there be limits on the wood? Oops, don't talk in the chat if I'm reading it. Will there be limits on what wooden artists are burnable and which are not? We kind of answered this
I
already.
think you meant to say assets.
Assets, you're right, not artists.
We are gonna have wooden artists.
We can burn them.
Yeah.
Effigies.
The artists get very grumpy when you light them on fire. So, personal experience. Yeah, some of this is going to be worked out. We try not to look at it as just elements, and we've actually kind of steered a little bit away from your classic, earth, fire, water, air, lightning. To kind of, we look at it more like as the word we keep throwing around in the building is interactables, right? And so it's like things that manipulate AI, whether that be bait or detractors or mind control spells, elementals, fire, water. That's only one like small part. And there's some others. I don't want to give too much away. But we're trying really hard not to lean on just that 4 elemental trope that you see in pretty much every fantasy game. Yes, there's some of it, of course, right? Because like throwing fireballs is cool. But we're not like only going there, right? There's all these other things that we're trying to do with physics and other ways to manipulate your environment. So I guess that will and how all that tunes out, we'll see. But yes, there'll be constraints, like I was saying about the fire earlier. You can't just burn down the world, as fun as it is. There'll be some constraints on what's affected and what's not.
Right. Okay, we have a question about the music. Can you say anything more concrete about what you're thinking about music in the game? He's biased towards ambient approach, so he wants to know what we're doing.
Can I answer this one?
Yeah, sure.
So I know that all of us at this company are vehemently opposed to forcing music upon the players, especially combat music. That's sort of like, hey, I'm walking around, oh, there's the combat music, I must be in combat, but where is the combat? Nothing like that. I know there's going to be music, and I can't tell you yet, I don't think, who's doing the music, right? But I can tell you it's going to be awesome, and I can tell you that it's going to be on a slider. So if you don't want to have music in your maps, you can slide it down to 0.
We just brought on, are we allowed to talk about that?
Yeah.
Pause.
Pause. What's his name?
We have a new audio director.
Yeah, we have a new audio director, and he did a bunch of work on BioShock and 1,000 other games. And
Most notably, BioShock Infinite, he took some like modern songs and then made old-timey ragtime versions of them. He's responsible for that.
So I guess the discussions will have to be, what does he want to do with it, right? I mean, one of the things that we like to do here is allow designers to design and artists to be artists and musicians to be musicians.
Right.
Instead of just kind of giving direction that might not necessarily be the right one. Right?
Just realize it's easier for you guys to see.
I still think that it should all be acoustic heavy metal, played on hurdy-gurdies and ukuleles, but I keep getting outvoted.
Yeah. And for you ambient sound guys, there's still plans to support, ambient sound that is robust.
Yeah. He did just recently did a test audio pass that we had on a video, and it was fantastic. It was fantastic. I mean, he only worked on it for a couple of days, but like even some of the things that he was deciding what that sounds like was a little out of the box and unique. One of them was, even something as simple as what the skeleton sounds like. He took a totally different tack that totally worked. So I have a lot of faith in where we're going to end up.
Can I talk about musical sound design?
Sure.
So back to the question about music. We're not going to have traditional soundtracks. So I think the music will be more like musical sound design. It will be very localized. So certain elements within the world will have sound that surrounds them, and it will be melodic, musical as you approach these objects, and so that will create interest in the world. But it will be very specific to objects, items in the world, locations, not the combat audio like Justin described. So that's a different direction. It's not a traditional way to deliver music.
Right. I guess a good example of that actually is if you go back and you play the original Thief, there's these musical stings that happen at very specific points of like, hey, you're getting close, or hey, there's something here, maybe you should take a look around. They're really short, they're like under a second each, but they're like a ring, or right? And
Just a hint.
Just a hint, and it totally works. And what's really kind of cool about that is they were totally an 11th hour thing. They were put in like 2 weeks before show. Because Eric Brocious couldn't leave it alone, and he went in and like redid all the audio 2 weeks before ship, because that's who he is.
I see we have some more follow-up music questions up here, and then there's more. People are just throwing questions in the chat right now.
Awesome.
From above. Oh, God. Let's finish up music really quick. So we see Dawn is asking about whether it sits in the background, it's more aggressive in your face, requires active listening.
I wouldn't say it requires active listening, but neither is it just in the background, but it's sort of like punctuation. And like Chris said, it's something that doesn't take a long time. These things are going to be shorter in nature, but they'll be very localized. But I don't think I wouldn't characterize it as active listening. But it will definitely create a mood.
Nice.
This is a loaded question. How do you think that where you are right now and where you're planning to get compares to the Prey and Dishonored 2? Yeah.
2 awesome games.
Yeah, and I have to say that, we're production-wise, we're gonna do as best as we can with the resources we have.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a $30 million game like those two games are. We're much smaller. We do not have 100 artists at our disposal. We have a few. So there is some constraints there. But the way we're doing it is tightly focused, and quality over quantity, really. I mean, we can't give you Skyrim this time. Maybe next time. But everything we're doing, we're trying to make sure that it's best of show. Whatever system that we're putting together, and with the levels that we're putting together, we're definitely aiming for that AAA bar.
And design-wise, those guys took Looking Glass philosophies and Looking Glass designs, polished them up for
The modern era.
Current modern era, right? And we're not going to then take what they did and polish that. We're instead sort of going back to the core Looking Glass philosophies and trying to expand upon those instead of just sort of remake a Looking Glass game. We want to make the next step, an other side game.
Mm-hmm. Related question that was lost before. How many employees are working on this game, and how does it break down as far as who is working on what? So how many people
I
are
don't
here?
know. A cast of dozens.
We have a very small team. It's I'd say it's definitely less than 20. But we have a mix of employees and contractors, but we're all one big happy team. Some of us are here in the studio, and some of us are remote. So we have the usual disciplines involved, from design to engineering, art, animation, level design. People who are highly talented in their respective disciplines. I think that's also one of the keys to our ability to, deliver, such a high quality, aspiring to AAA production values. We have a very talented team, people who have tons and tons of experience, not only with these kind of games, but with lots of games. And, there are, some veterans in the group, and people who really have not only talent, but just, a lot of know-how and experience. So it's the little engine that could. And I think we're going to make a great game with this team. And, it's more about, the right team rather than the size of the team, in my view, anyway.
Good. I have another question that was buried a while ago. How much interactivity can we expect in the scenery? Can we knock paintings off of walls?
That would be simple. Where we'll end up at the end is a good question, and a lot of that, I think, is going to come down to time and horsepower, right? Mm-hmm. Every time we have one of these things that is interactable, it is a cost. And so, do we want to go super wide and have everything, or do we want to make sure that we're just concentrating on things that are actually fun? Mm-hmm. I aim for the fun part, and it sounds great to have a world that everything is if I push this and do that, and that's cool, but it can get out of control pretty quickly.
I think we're focusing on things that have interesting possibilities.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So not everything that you could push around in the world necessarily would yield interesting possibilities.
Right.
We could see 7P just asked, can you say something? Oh, okay. Regarding NPC trees, how complicated can the dialogue trees get?
Not sure.
Trees. We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. Can we shut down Slack?
That's Thomas.
I can answer the localization question. So right now, our plan for other languages, I think we're doing it's on the Steam page. We have what other languages we're going to support at launch. We're only going to do VO for English, as for audio, and we're going to do subtitles for I think it's German and Spanish and French, if I remember right. The Steam page has the proper ones that we're going to be doing for localization. We've started a little bit on it. There'll be some in the next backer build we do, there will be a checkbox in the options menu. I can pretty much guarantee that not everything's going to be translated, but the option will be there to see some Spanish. So
We doing like Looney Tunes French, like les peur, les meow.
it's going to be really horrible first because I have a button that just does the Google Translate, so the first translation is going to be really bad.
Oh, fantastic.
Boy. Okay, Don had a question earlier that I want to get back to. How many spells will be in the final game? Of those, how many are used for utility and problem solving, like force push, gravity, magnetism, blink, invisibility, versus used for direct damage?
Yes.
Everything.
Final number is, I'll say it depends on how you count. And I would say it's probably 90-10 for manipulation versus damage.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'd say so, definitely.
9,000.
Like
No,
90%
90% of them are world manipulation.
We're not gonna have 9,010.
And, 10% is direct damage. Look, direct damage is just an arrow, right, by another name. Well, that's not very exciting. So, yeah, we spent much more time on things that are world manipulation. And look, they can, if you're clever, you can do a lot of damage with those. You just have to think it through a little bit more. One of the things that Tim and I and Will spoke of really early on was wizards should require learning to make them really powerful. They require a little more thought to play than some guy running around with a sword. And it was, how do you make a magic system that doesn't turn into just a glass cannon, right? So we took a little bit of a different tack with the magic system than most games.
Okay. Another question we have is, how long will the final game be? So the main quest versus main quest plus side quests. What are we aiming for?
I can't answer that. At this
Can't
point.
answer. Okay.
Okay.
Not even a ballpark.
Right?
Guess not.
I mean, yeah,
It's complicated.
it's complicated.
It wouldn't be an accurate answer anyway.
I can say that replayability is a big focus.
Yep.
A lot of what we're doing, because of the systemic design or nature of everything that goes into the game, you can play it many different ways. There are different archetypes in terms of play styles. There aren't, you're not locked into one character class or another necessarily, but you can gravitate towards one play style or another based on certain archetypes. And you can mix and match. So there's a lot of mixing and matching in terms of, what skills you develop and what, spells you choose to use and whatnot. So I think, the replayability can be infinite. It would, it will get closer to that the more interesting it is. But technically, theoretically, the replay could be infinite, but it really will come down to how interesting that is.
Yeah, with the character creation, it is kind of play your own way. We're not locking you into I'm a fighter, I'm a wizard. We've talked about that before. And it's definitely one of the things that I'm happy to see now that the things are getting more broadened and worked out, is it does remind me actually of DDO, where it's like, oh, I really can start building this with a splash of this or a tweak of that, to really get the guy I kind of want to be playing. I'm the combat action guy on the team. Tim is the wizard. Basically, that's where we end up game testing most of the time. But I'm even finding that I'm like, oh, but I really need to take something to be able to light torches on fire. And a couple other things.
Right. It looks like we have a lot of story questions coming in, some of which we have just lost off the top of the screen. So the first story question was, is the story already fixed, or are you improvising and changing things as you see possibilities? More of a
Right, so
joke question, but if you have anything, yeah.
So the story is unfolding over time, getting better and better as we go. The writer is always coming up with better ideas to communicate his fiction based on the work that we're doing. So it's in flux, though there is a base there. And as a level designer, I can say that I'm trying to make it so that as much of the story as possible is gleanable from just exploring and looking around. I know we'll probably have some audio and things to read to flesh out the fiction quite a bit more. But it's my goal as a level designer to make that fiction evident in the worlds that you're exploring.
Okay. Next question we have is, what narrative delivery devices will we use? Dreams, flashbacks, cutscenes, scripted sequences, etc.
Well, some of it is actually Cabris talking to you while you're walking around in the town hub. So you can expect some of that.
So that's audio log-ish.
When it comes to cutscenes are pretty much shunned upon when it comes to the looking glass methodology, because anytime you're watching a cutscene, you're not actually interacting with the game. So cutscenes really only have a place in really when you're trying to set up the story to tell the player about what kind of world they're in and what the situation is and who the characters are. And same thing for like at the end of the game, maybe there's going to be a cutscene. I don't know. Like that's kind of one of those things where I'd prefer it if there wasn't. I'd prefer if there was no cutscenes in the game, because a cutscene is just kind of a shortcut to try to tell as much story as possible and get the player to listen. So don't expect cutscenes every 10 minutes in the game. I would,
No cutscenes. If you do a cutscene, it has to be amazing.
Right.
Like people.
Okay. Next question is, what playthrough time are we aiming for right now? Kind of related to the.
How long is the
Can't
game?
answer.
Yeah,
We're
we can't
aiming
really
for
answer.
forever.
Right. Well, like Parker said, replayability is one of the things that we have as almost as a core feature.
Okay. Without telling anything about the story, but if everything is physical and interactive, how do you prevent something like a player destroying an item that is necessary for a future task? Will we even have situations like that?
I mean, the cheesy answer is that we make it so it's non-destroyable. I mean, there is the we can always fall back on that.
But we would never make something that was destroyable elsewhere in the world have one instance that wasn't destroyable for no discernible reason.
Right. Yeah.
So it'll be consistent.
The longer answer is that we would never have a barrier that was only one way to get through.
Right.
We're not doing these item hunts like first you tell us we've got to find a key and then find a tiny little pixel for the key to fit into. That's not so much what this game's about.
I mean, if you guys knew the nightmare that Tim's going through just getting doors to work right, there's literally a book that could be written about the creation of the Underworld door. But it's because, we want to make it so it's, there's it's a complex, many different ways of interacting with such a simple object. The door's the extreme case. Not everything's that insane to build, but.
Okay, next question is, have you taken any ideas that came from the postings in the forums? Please be honest.
Yes.
We have.
Yeah, I've definitely used some ideas for some of the skills. We went back and forth on a few of the forum threads and ended up using a few of them. I can't really think of the exact skills, but a lot of the skills were in one of the earlier prototype demos, and people were trying them out and putting their feedback in, which was awesome to get so much feedback. And yeah, we've been implementing that feedback, which is great. So,
there's been a number of discussions of really just finding out what you guys like and what you don't like, and acting on that. There were some assumptions that we made, in a vacuum that weren't quite right. I mean, we are, as much as we're building it for ourselves on some level, we're also building it really for the fans. And we've been trying to be pretty careful about making a game that you guys will like. That's sort of the name of the game. And, all the feedback that we get from you guys, definitely, reinforces if we're going in the right direction or the wrong direction. Believe me, when it came down to the whole art thing about a year and a half ago, we heard you. Loud and clear. And, but I will also say that we got what you were reacting to, but we also liked on some level the direction that Nate was trying to push us in. And I think where we actually ended up is sort of a compromise between the two and worked out great.
Mhm.
Makes good wallpapers.
Yeah, the lizard man art. Yeah, we're trying to figure out how we should split spoiler versus non-spoiler. I think it's a little tricky to decide. I would say entering the stream, you should understand that you may have certain mechanics or areas spoiled, but we're not even going to talk about that much.
We're not gonna spoil the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're saving that. But if you do feel uncomfortable with like spoiler territory, you may not feel comfortable being here at the round table because we're just going to take whatever questions we get.
Yeah.
Nth degree, yeah, and the lizard man's actually been redesigned again, so he's even better now.
Mhm. I see Dog has a question. How much verticality will be present in the final game?
Tons.
Tons.
We're really trying to leverage the location. A lot of games have really funky locations, but they're really just set dressing around the outside to make it look pretty. We're trying to think about what it is about the Stygian Abyss, the underground, the underworld, that can inform the level design. So crazy cavern shapes and depth and rooms stacked on top of each other and guys, at the top of huge chasms throwing boxes down at you. And maybe I'm getting into too much detail, but
Very
verticality.
specific.
Verticality is one of those things we can really leverage about being underground in our maps, and we're taking advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. Good. I just saw a question about stealth that got lost a little while ago from Dawn. Will stealth be limited to light and sound, or are there going to be other devices such as disguises?
No disguises this game, but I have heard that that discussion loud and clear.
Mhm.
So stay tuned for future other side games.
Got it. Do you guys have any other questions, or did we catch up? That'd be amazing if we caught up. Yeah, I think we're...
Talking door. No, the doors do not talk, but now they will.
No more talking.
I know, there was one talking door in the original.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right, encouraging people to continue giving us questions, because we're here for you.
More questions.
I'm gonna take this opportunity
Yeah,
to
sure.
step out.
All right, no problem. All right, Parker's gonna leave.
Bye, Parker.
Dude.
Bye.
Bye. Hold down the fort.
Voice acting.
Ooh, I see puzzles as well.
Well, we definitely have Garrett joining us. Steven Russell, I always forget his last name.
He's always Garrett.
Garrett, yeah, he's Garrett to me. Or half the cast of Skyrim.
Yeah, right. It's like every other guy.
Yes, thank you, Steven Russell. And as far as I know, I'm going to forget her name too, and I work with her. I'm terrible. Terry Grotius will also be doing some work with us.
Showdown.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Showdown. But she'll be not Showdown in this game. Sorry, we're not doing that
Can you
crossover.
imagine?
Are we sure?
She's
No
been
spoiling.
sent to the abyss.
Well, it's funny you say that because one of the earliest pitches that got completely shot down was the whole Stygian Abyss was actually inside of an
I
asteroid.
love that.
Oh my god.
And the final thing at the end was going to be the crash shuttle.
Cool.
Yeah, I loved it, but we didn't have the rights to shock back yet. And, yeah, I think the asteroid thing kind of turned some people off.
I think it's cool.
I
Sounds
loved
pretty
it.
rad. Not gonna lie.
Not my idea.
I see. How many puzzles will be present in the final game?
Can I answer this?
Sure.
So we don't really have this concept of puzzles specifically, where it's like there's one specific way to solve it, like in Myst, say, or like The Seventh Guest, where you've got to, win some chess game to open a door.
Mhm.
What we have more is this concept of challenges. So in some cases, we set up challenges to keep it simple, we'll say just a high ledge that the player has to get up to, but there's no clear step. There aren't any boxes around to just stack up. Where sometimes when we design these challenges, we don't know exactly how the player is going to solve the problem. We just sort of put a bunch of tools around and make and present opportunities that the player can take advantage of in order to solve these challenges. So it's not like you walk into a room and have to solve a puzzle to move forward, but in a level there'll be an array of impediments that you sort of have to think creatively to get around. And there's, we don't even know how many solutions there are to some of these impediments.
No, and part of the best part is seeing what people come up with, right? And we've already seen it through, from the demos and playtesting that people just go at it completely differently, and sometimes completely different things than we expect. It's really kind of cool. So we know, and I know from my Looking Glass days, is that at the end of the day, there's going to be all these solutions that we didn't even know. Like people were solving things in Thief that we did not design.
But it happened.
Yeah.
Which is good. I saw a question about, can we attach spells to the tips of our arrows? It's a very specific question. No.
Not currently.
I think so.
No, there's an idea.
There's some interesting thoughts in that direction, but we don't want to spoil it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. Can we say anything about ecology in the Abyss and how it will work?
I think
No.
No.
I think that's a no.
We have creatures, and they can be interacted with, and not just by killing them.
Right. Well,
How's
we
that?
revealed a little bit of the deep slug, if we want to use that as an example.
Yeah, but I don't want to. Right.
Right.
We are thinking.
There are
about
things
it.
that you can do with the deep slug.
Let's find out. Okay. How many survival elements will be present in the final game? Temperature, food, water, shelter, sleep. You guys really like sleep.
Okay, so food is definitely a thing.
Yep.
The sleep isn't going to be a thing in the game.
Yep. Itemware is in the game.
Keep in mind too, if we say that X is a thing, that that doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to get cut. So
There is that.
Please don't get mad.
Right. And also, on the other side of that is if we say it's not in the game, doesn't mean it won't be.
Yeah, right.
Just our current state. Okay.
Part of the process here too is like iterating and testing. So we'll build something out and then put it in the game and see how it feels and see how people are reacting to it. And from that, change it, cut it, or enhance it.
Yeah, and that actually is a big reason why we're not like saying this thing will be in the game, because I don't want to promise anything that'll be in the game if we find out that it's not fun through playing it.
We can tell you if we're thinking about concepts like survival, which we are very much.
Right. All right. I don't know how much we can say about this question without Joe, but how much of the original Stygian Abyss and the original lore will be in this game?
That's a Joe question.
That is a Joe question.
No spoilers.
Yeah.
But we're thinking about that.
We're thinking about it. So we'll just have to follow up. Oh God, you have so many questions all of a sudden. What's happening, guys?
I'll take the darkness one then.
Yeah, just handle it.
Darkness. You can set the gamma level so high you can see more. So sure, and you can pretty much do that in every game. But the difference is what our AI is reacting to is not a gamma level. He's reacting to what we set the light at. So yeah, you can crank it and see it really washed out and kind of terrible, but it's not going to give you any gained stealth abilities.
It's not all pitch black like Underworld one.
Right.
No,
Which
definitely
was
not.
awesome, but not necessarily this game. Though light and dark is a thing.
Yeah.
For now.
For now. We have a question. Where are you with regards to repopulating areas? Is it a believable organic process, or as soon as you walk away 5 steps, entities respawn?
Are we even respawning right now? We have it as a thing, but have we even used it?
It's our goal to make everything believable and logical, right?
Yeah.
So off stage left.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's a question up that I was going to answer, but it's, can you scroll up a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay, so the area layout, we will have a central hub. That's a thing that we're playing with right now. The city of Mark Hall. So trying to think of it as like the town center of Diablo and all those games, you know.
Pits Hub.
Yeah, you always go back to this town and do your thing, like talk to people or whatever, and fiddle with stuff. So, yeah.
We had a follow-up question on this on the forum, not related to here. How safe is the hub? Like, can you get attacked? Will it be a safe area where you can't
Right now, it's
take
safe
damage?
zone, yeah.
No spoilers.
Yeah.
Safe and no spoilers. We'll see what changes. So who knows? Maybe there will be an element of danger there at some point.
So the map thing, Chris Marrow was just talking to me about this. So the map, you will be able to write on it. We have a version of that in. We're not super happy with it, so we'll be fiddling with it. So that'll be pretty awesome.
That was the core of Underworld 1 for me as a player. Like going back and forth from the map,
Not alone.
learning the space, feeling like a cartographer,
Yep.
taking
And like,
copious
writing
notes.
in.
Well, it
That
was
was
such a early Dungeons and Dragons thing too, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, back in the first and second edition, before we had play mats and putting the map out on the table, we were always like,
Or
it
even
was
us-
completely wrong by the end.
yeah, like the text games like Zork, right?
Yeah.
Where you really have to draw a map.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
good. I'll tell you, I tried drawing a map once for Solstice. I don't know if anyone's ever played that game. Man, that is an exercise in frustration.
Oh man. Can we rotate maps?
No?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
What does that mean exactly?
Like rotate your own map to write on it, so maybe
Oh.
you want to like.
I've never even
change the
thought of
way you
that.
use
If you're
something.
playing on a Wacom tablet, you can.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting.
Well, what I just got from Will is yes, right now, no, but now we'll
Yeah.
Now
we
think
know
about
to
it.
think about.
Yeah, I didn't even
It's a
think
good
of that.
question. Sounds like an art question. Are you using Enlighten for all of your lighting? I don't know what that means.
Are we using that? We're not using that plugin, right?
Enlighten is the built-in Unity where you bake the lights.
No.
It's the thing with Enlighten, right, is Enlighten's really beautiful, blah, 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 all that, looks cool, but it's primarily made for the sun. The problem with this game,
We don't have one of
we don't have a
those.
sun.
That's the sun.
Whole game's underground, so the Enlighten stuff is kind of, we've actually been skipping that. Our latest build that we've been putting out our latest build doesn't have any baked lighting at all. It's just completely dynamic lighting and dynamic lights everywhere. So you can see that when you, like, you know, you can pick up the boxes, hold them up to a fire and throw them around, is that the lighting is just all over the place. And it's kind of, it makes sense for us anyway, because we have so many lights that you can change, interact with, turn on and off, that baked lighting would actually be kind of a waste of time for us. And another big, awesome reason to skip the baked lighting is because baking lights takes lots of time. If we were to bake one of our levels, it would probably take like 16 hours or something crazy. And, you know, we're lucky enough not to have to deal with that.
Sorry, I was just killing Slack because
That was like 3
I was sick of seeing somebody else's messages.
Interactive cooking. Will it be possible to cook with recipes, and can you hurt yourself by adding too much powder? Where did this come from?
If we have such a thing as cooking in, it will be a little bit more like Zelda and not like the Final Fantasy 15.
Is that what happens in Final Fantasy 15?
Well, their cooking is pretty involved.
Yeah, it's like a whole system. It's crazy.
Yeah, they
You
spent a
discover
lot.
recipes.
It felt like they spent as much time on downtime as they did on adventuring. It was kind of nuts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Can we say anything about the Lizardman tongue? Will the player have means to translate in the game like a dictionary or any other in-game help?
No comment.
A Joe question.
It's a Joe question.
I'm sorry.
He's actually quite sick right now, which is the only reason he's not here. But we could forward these along and probably be able to answer them on the forums. So if you're on our forums, be sure to check that later.
No, Inventory Tetris got killed, and I'm sad because I love Inventory Tetris.
Me too.
And everybody else wanted to just go with the stupid little blocks.
What is going on?
I guess that
How
didn't
does
work.
this keep happening?
Oh, was that email instead?
I guess so. This is horrible. Anyways, inventory Tetris. Are there scary zones? Consistent fantasy tone. What is a scary zone? Like a horror level?
No spoilers.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that right now.
I mean, our levels are all going to have different themes, and then within that themes, variations on the theme.
Okay,
and
but
there's
they can
lots of
expect
things.
different areas.
Yeah.
Like it's not just
Right.
one kind of environment.
Right.
Really inventory.
No, thank God.
Not.
Sorry, but inventory, anything like UW1 or Arx Fatalis or something completely different. I would say more like,
We're a lot like Shock 2 at the moment.
yeah,
Yeah, I'd say we're pretty close to Shock 2, except we don't have the inventory items that take up multiple blocks, like how we were talking about the no Tetris. The Tetris is like, oh, this item is shaped like a 2x3, and you have to fit it into this. We're just gonna skip that, because there's lots of
ooh,
issues that happen with that, and honestly, we'd like to have an inventory.
Okay, Anth really wanted to know about dreams. I think we somewhat addressed this before.
yeah, there was talk early on about using sleep and dreams as a way of, as like a narrative device. That unfortunately got dropped on the floor. Yeah, we could come back to it in a later game. Is there an upset specter who's going to make a reappearance every Tuesday? I don't know. I think that falls under the Easter egg thing.
We'll look forward to it. All right, Don's clarifying. I wanted to know variation versus fantasy tone. Great to hear you're having variations in tone between areas.
Yeah.
So, like, no.
Yep.
Leave me
Just ask it.
alone.
Yeah, I think that's Skype that's popping up. Oh my goodness, it's on top of everything.
Is this good?
I hate computers.
Oh.
Oh my
Can we
god.
see that?
No, they can't.
No.
It's just annoying. It keeps showing up. Let's handle this one. How much of the final game will be combat versus NPC interaction and dialogue?
Okay, at first, well, wait a second. Combat being the first word. Hold on. Hold on. So, I wouldn't put combat first, because this is a game about being creative and exploring and interacting with the world. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to punch everything in the face. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to stop you from punching everything in the face. I'd say NPC interaction will be pretty minimal, and dialogue will be pretty minimal as well. This is more about like experimenting with the world and playing around with the sandbox of each area.
Again, this is one of those, early on, we really wanted to be able to put in, a diplomacy system. And that's another one of those things that we had to kind of chop out.
You can stab everyone, or you can stab no one.
Oh yeah, Ravenloft came out. Ravenloft! For those that don't know, DDO came out with this Ravenloft expansion. It's gonna
What
be
does
awesome.
that mean?
It's Ravenloft. So vampires, all the horrible things. You have to make sure you burn the bodies. It's Ravenloft. I'm gonna try it out.
You just
And if I was still running that game, we would have been doing Barrier Peaks, but
Dude, Ravenloft is pretty awesome, I gotta admit.
Barrier Peaks had laser guns,
That would've
Vampire.
been cool.
laser pistols.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right, it looks like we've caught up to the live questions. I'll give you guys a minute to submit some more. Otherwise, we could use the submitted questions.
Okay, we can do that.
Just gonna get
Yeah, Dom Razor, one of the things that, that we're looking at is like, we care more about the core gameplay that's happening moment to moment. And, because that's what people do most of the time when they're playing the game. And less about meta. Yeah. The meta's there, but it's not up in the front like Baldur's Gate or something.
I see we have a hardware question. What are we using? Intel, NVIDIA, or do you have an AMD?
The majority of us have Intel and NVIDIA.
There is an
cards.
AMD in the building, but yeah, we're pretty hardcore Intel and NVIDIA. But I have an AMD at home now for the boys, so if worst comes to worst, we'll just use that system.
One of our animators is on Mac as well. So
Yes, he is.
I'll be bugging him for some feedback on the Mac build stuff.
Just gonna slip that in there from the survey question. Are we supporting 21 by 9?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say so. It probably looks.
Done.
It might look weird.
It might look weird at first, like definitely in the pre-alpha and alpha, it's probably going to look really strange and put icons everywhere. But I guess we actually, I heard we have one of those monitors in the building.
We
so
did,
that's cool.
yeah, the
but-
boss man just got one off eBay that is in his office. It's really cool.
Just sitting there.
And it's curved and it's kind of awesome.
You can also get that if you take like two 1080s and
Yeah.
put them next to each other.
Which is something that NVIDIA is going to start supporting pretty heavily.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now that monitors are borderless.
Okay. Yes, I know you guys are updating yourselves on questions. That's always nice.
Okay, we can answer more.
Let me check the submitted questions really quick, just to make sure we're not leaving those out.
Macs suck. Well, yeah.
So that one guy
One
works
guy?
for DD.
Whoa, both of us worked on
I
DDS.
also work
That
on
one
DDS.
guy?
You worked on DDS.
Yeah, three of us, all three of us, at one point or another.
Why did I leave the team?
Because Paul offered me a job, so I came here.
I left because of Warner Brothers. That's why I left.
They took me off of DDO, which I didn't want to leave, and put me on Lord of the Rings, which I didn't want to work on. And in all turbine tradition, they would have a yearly layoff, so I actually just had them put me on the list, and took the money and ran, and
Here we are.
here I am. I think I was unemployed for 3 days or something. And then I went back and poached him.
You went back just to steal.
I did. It was not even a month later, and I was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
Will, what's up?"
Yeah, I left because, obviously this place. I also left because WB wouldn't let me work on side projects or have my own side company and stuff like that. So that was a huge, big thing to tell someone, like, hey, do you like working on cars? You can be a mechanic, but we're not going to allow you to work on your own car. One of those situations. It was a big, AAA versus indie thing as to why I left.
Examine action. We could do that.
Examine act. Oh, artist, sorry.
See the description of it.
The question is,
We
in
could
the
do that.
original
That wouldn't be
Underworld,
hard.
you could click anything to see a text.
That's hard on
We
me.
have to describe everything.
No, that's hard on me, not on you.
The big thing with that was you could see the secret walls, because if you clicked on a wall, it would say
It'll
this
tell
is
you.
a
Here,
secret
a
wall.
secret wall.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Can you detach your mouse cursor to directly manipulate objects in the environment?
You don't really detach your mouse cursor. What you do is a lot like Fallout and Skyrim, where you can pick up objects if you press and hold the interact. That's the thing that we have right now. And then of course you can click on objects like a door to open it. And that doesn't have the disconnecting mouse cursor either. That's just part of your aiming reticle. Oh my goodness, so many questions. That's a big one.
So
That's
that
a good
big
one.
one is about building boxes. So Justin or Chris.
That's sort of we're trying to figure out how to build a better mousetrap without throwing the mousetrap away. So you can stack boxes if you want, and that can be advantageous. But there are certainly other more interesting ways to solve challenges.
Yeah, and the second part of his question is, how do you avoid the player breaking the game without forcing one type of solution? Testing, but the other part of it is, and this might sound weird coming from game designers, is we don't care.
Yeah.
Break away. Are you using your brain? Are you coming up with a clever solution? Fine, great. It's if it's completely exploited, it's something that we might look at, in a patch or something. But because it's not, competitive multiplayer, nobody's getting hurt other than you, we're perfectly fine with, you taking complete advantages of the systems that we build. Matter of fact, we kind of encourage it.
You may even be rewarded for doing so.
If you find something that you're getting like infinite loot or whatever, those are the things that we'll patch, right? But if you found like a really clever way to get through something that we didn't think of, the reaction from other side is really going to be like, sweet. Yeah, if you like made a video of that, we're gonna show it off.
Yeah, right. That's cool. So I want to clarify, when he says testing, so there's two types of testing, really. One is our internal testing of like our QA team looking for bugs and like, is this feature even work? Is this not fun? Whatever. And external testing is what we've been calling, where we pull in random people every week or so actually, and have them try out the game and play it and see what their reactions are. Because, all of us, we're going to be bad at testing our own game because, I've been at it every minute. So it's kind of like wearing blinders and, oh yeah, this game I guess it looks good. Although I haven't actually done a level yet. I've just been stuck in my little test area. I think it looks good, which is terrible to base any kind of conclusions off of. Yes, we played PUBG.
Yes, Will was actually quite good at it his first day.
Yeah, we streamed it the other week.
I got a new machine coming. It was supposed to come today, but FedEx didn't leave it, and so I own it, but I haven't played it.
PUBG's coming to console too, I've heard. So
wild.
it's gonna get crazy.
How's funding? Yeah, we're fine.
Funding's okay.
Yeah.
We're doing really good. I mean, we have a Texas studio. They have a publisher, and we have a publisher. I'd say we're doing pretty awesome for funding.
Speak. Okay.
Where do we buy the abyss loot boxes?
Okay, loot
Can you
boxes. All right,
imagine?
if this is a Shadow of War thing, I'm sorry, I don't get the controversy here. You didn't have to touch a single one of those things to beat the game. That said, I did. Because I got really into the whole Nemesis system and the cool orcs, so yeah, I spent a few bucks to get some legendaries. I admit it.
So are we gonna have any for Underworld Ascendant?
We do not have any
I don't
MTX
think we
plans.
have any of that
I'm
planned.
trying to imagine how that would work.
No.
Like,
Look, I'm not adverse to MTX plans, but it's definitely not appropriate for this particular game.
Great.
But not in my department.
Alright, highlights. Will there be an integrated record feature so we can capture our water cooler moments?
Well,
Those
yes,
were-
there is.
I don't think we've
There's-
announced that yet.
We have, last roundtable we talked about it.
Yep, we talked about it.
Yes.
So I put up to the G key. So for you guys who have played Slime Rancher, in Slime Rancher you can press the G key and it'll record the last 5 seconds of gameplay as a GIF. Right now I have mine set at 20 seconds and it's an audio form. It's a full video format because surprisingly the MP4 or AVI or whatever was a smaller size than GIFs, which is weird, but I can export it to either one and then it just shows up in your My Pictures. so it's pretty awesome.
And there's a whole thing in there that we'll talk about at a later date. It does integrate into some of our gameplay, because why have a feature if it's not wrapped around the rest of the game, right?
Yeah.
Alright, so Anne hasn't played the pre-alpha or alpha, which is good because alpha's not out yet. But how will Underworld Descendant, me too, Ascendant compare to Ultima Underworld in terms of the story? So for someone who was in the original Stygian Abyss, will there be a real connection, or is this game just awesome?
There's a real connection.
Yeah.
We don't want to give away too much lore stuff, but it is connected.
We caught up, I think.
Cool.
Wow, so some of you are gonna dip out
Bye.
and grab some
See?
other developers. We're swapping out so it's a little fresh.
Grab
Give you a
the
break.
Chris Mayer?
Yes,
Yeah.
grab him. And anyone else who really wants to join. Will, are you staying for the next hour as well?
So the pet, We don't have a pet in yet. We know, this is one of those that we know how to do it, so it just keeps getting pushed farther and farther down into development. It'll be in the next month or two. The models are kind of being worked on right now. There is no co-op. Sorry. I fought as hard as I could and lost.
Just walk right in front of it.
Yeah.
Just put your face in it. It's not live.
Hey, that's why.
There's a 10-second delay.
Alright, this is Chris Mayer, one of our engineers. I was gonna say coming back, but then I realized we did the test and you weren't even in it.
Huge areas.
So Don, this is the huge areas thing. This is something we were talking about before, is that we'd rather have a small area that has lots of good interactions instead of spreading our paintbrush out so far and not being able to make every spot really fun. So there's a big balance of like, yeah, we don't want to make enormous areas, and because it'll take a lot of time to make every section very fun. Also, there's the performance considerations that this is actually an extremely physics-heavy game, so we don't really want to make enormous areas where there's dozens of crates laying around and you interacting with the crates and doing all these spells on them and all these AIs moving around that are also fiddling with objects.
That said, something that Justin has been talking about and working on is making large areas where you can get a view of the whole thing, so that it gives you space to kind of plan and see your options. And they're not like Skyrim-sized open areas or anything, but they are designed to be large and visible.
Right, and they're not like as tiny as like Thief 3 levels, right? They're modest.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
They're like visually impressive. They feel big. What have you guys been doing? Are you just going through?
Yeah, we're going through
Questions?
mostly live questions.
We're going back and forth a
Yeah.
little bit between live questions and questions that were
I think
put
we're
up
mostly caught up on the live questions,
The
so
sound.
I'm gonna use some submitted ones so we don't lose track of that. Classic games used to have cheat codes and other fun meta activities for when the game was completed due to a depth satisfactory to the gamer. Would Underworld Ascendant benefit from such things in any way?
So the modern thing for cheat codes, right, you'll see this in Grand Theft Auto, is that you can put in cheat codes in Grand Theft Auto, but it flags your save game and you can't get achievements. That was pretty much the fix, because achievements were the reason that everybody moved away from cheat codes, because you could just put in the cheat code that says give me every achievement, and then you got every achievement. So we'll pretty much be doing the same thing, is that once you put in the cheat code, you can do command line or stuff, because whatever, might as well give you guys the command line, who cares? And then your save game will be flagged as a cheater, and you obviously just can't get the achievements if you're cheating.
And of course, we take no responsibility for whatever dumb stuff you do with those powers.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And please share any videos you make where
Yeah.
you're spawning hundreds of things, because that's awesome.
And actually, I don't know if GTA 5 had cheats. 4 had that awesome thing with the
GTA 5 has
phone
cheats.
that would pop up and you could make
Yeah.
calls and it would do cheats.
No,
for you.
GTA 5 has cheats.
Yeah, it has, I think, the same setup.
They're all in my G15 keyboard.
Are they just typing in specific?
Yeah. So, it's just the usual,
So you have
give me all the weapons, give me all the ammo. 'Cause I don't care about achievements.
The sound you make, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna just get to the next question I saw. What is the status of fast travel? Is there any?
Fast travel, no.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, there's something like moon doors.
Isn't it an Underworld 2 thing, the portals?
Yeah,
We're talking about that? I don't know.
yeah.
That's that answer.
Yeah, I'd say Underworld 2 is the closest setup to it, because Underworld 2, you didn't even really need fast travel, because the portals will just kind of take you to where you needed to get. So we're close to that, I guess. I don't know. Calling it fast travel is a weird way to.
Yeah, so fast travel, no, there's no such thing.
And that system's also still kind of,
Right.
We're still building it up. Yeah.
so I think it's not done. Wait a minute.
Right.
classic other side design right there. It's not done. I don't know. What are you building? I'm not really sure yet.
It works right now, but we could definitely like pretty it up. And make it more
Just
interesting, I think.
Will there be a hardcore mode where you can only see the sound?
You can-
So this was an early debate that we're gonna have to come back around on. I'm more than happy to just do the UI elements of like hardcore mode and, you know,
Iron Man.
Iron Man or however you want to put it. There's some others that have fought against that. But no, I think we should, you know, make it official and just be like, yeah, can you beat the game without killing anybody, and, you know, actually putting that in as a mode.
I'd be curious to find out how many of our backers would want that.
Well, it's just a checkbox, right? I
You know,
mean,
like, you can enforce hardcore mode on yourself by like
well,
not
right. Well,
saving.
and that's the argument, right?
Yeah,
And,
so it's kind of like
you know, the one mode I wanted that we actually talked about putting into Thief 2 was a hardcore mode that if you died in a mission, we just deleted that save.
Whoa.
Thing, we just moved it back to the beginning, baby.
That's hard.
That's
awesome.
hardcore.
It's actually
That's
pretty
light.
easy.
Yeah,
we could.
yeah.
From a technical standpoint. I mean, something that we've talked about a lot actually is UI elements and how many of them there should be and how much they should help you out. So, you know, like a lot of games these days will have like quest markers where, you know, if you're looking at the quest, it'll be like an icon on your screen that kind of tells you what direction to run and that kind of thing. And it's, you know, it's come up in playtests that people are getting lost, so there's been some discussion about whether we should have systems like that. Obviously, a lot of people here are opposed to that because it's too easy. It sounds like where we're probably going to net out is having some of that stuff, but then letting players disable it, but I don't know, that stuff's kind of up in the air too.
I love how you guys just explode with questions occasionally. When you
What is
replay,
Reaper mode?
That's after our time, I think.
It's the hardest. If you jump back in now, there's like a new difficulty mode.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty sweet. That's like the little Reaper on it.
Like when you go into a quest?
Yeah, when you go into a quest now, instead of just like
Right.
normal hard
Yeah.
and very hard is like the hardest. Yeah.
When you replay, can you skip certain things? No comment.
Okay.
Again, it becomes sort of the way we're lining things up. That's sort of not an accurate way to put it.
I'd want to skip the tutorial.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't
we're
know.
definitely gonna, well, fight that one to the ends of the earth,
Yeah,
right?
so
We don't know yet.
That's already, sorry, been made loud and clear. Rope arrows, there are no rope arrows, sorry folks. But there are ways to pull objects towards you. So we didn't want to like go down the road of if there's a spell for something to duplicate the effort by making it like a thief flavored one or a fighter flavored one. So, you know, the fighter skills do one thing, the thief skills do another thing, and magic kind of fills the rest of the gap. So, you know, that way we weren't duplicating work, basically.
So Dolnor, I'm a little bit up. Dolnor has a question. Oh, you can keep that there. I'm telling everyone else. What tools and commands are going to help testers report bugs in a console way for reproduction, finding, squashing by the devs? So we already have a bunch of command line commands. We just put in a really useful one, the repeat command, where you can repeat whatever command you put in. We can pretty much like create any item in the game, spawn any monster. We can write down your location. I also have like, you know, all the other ones for like getting your system info up and running. So there's that.
I think they added one to dump the console to a text file too, if people want to submit that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That's just easier for me to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, you know, the only things my biggest complaints about Unity is it's not made for 47-year-old developers. Freaking text is so small.
We probably should have a bug reporting window or something though, actually.
I could add in something like that. I had that on a few of my games in college, is that you'd like open up a window and submit a bug report, and then it would like go.
What's nice about if you do that is that then there's the next step that we can do
go
it,
through.
that we can do it now after ship and leave it in there so people can just send us stuff.
Yeah, because like the game is, since it's heavy physics based, it's gonna be buggy. Whee! So having like a player bug reporting thing.
Although
very
there's
good
a
idea.
couple of like really common ones that I haven't seen in our game yet, like enemies just like flying in space and stuff.
I've seen that.
Oh, have you? I haven't come.
Because of work I've been doing.
Oh.
Like water
We were able
physics
to jump.
specifically.
We were able to jump pretty high on certain things.
Oh, I mean, there was that bug with when you
You jumped on the
some
rippers.
characters, yeah.
The best was like the skeleton AIs were just like
Popping out of, yeah.
just like
50 feet in the air.
on top of the rippers, being like boing,
Like,
boing.
whoa.
All right.
Is there going to be any combat based on the player's skill? Okay, so this is the Deus Ex versus Thief question. We are not gimping the player's natural ability. He might not have the ability to do certain actions, but we're not going to artificially like ruin your aim or,
Yeah.
like artificially make you fatigued for swinging your sword or whatever.
Right.
We're starting at 0 and going up. We're not starting at -50 and going to 0 then up, right?
Have we talked all about the skill unlocks and that stuff at all?
Not yet.
Should we talk about that?
I don't know. I don't even know what you guys are doing.
You give a high level.
At a high level, instead of just like getting experience, grinding for experience points and then using those to unlock skills, we're trying to have a system where when you do cool actions, that will be reflected in the system unlocking abilities related to that cool action and giving you skill points
To do such a
to
thing.
accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Hope it works.
I don't know how much.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Ooh, I want that one. Okay, Engine Artist is asking, if you want to sum up the game into one sentence, what would it be?
All right, well,
Okay, see if I can do this.
one
All right.
sentence, not even
So-
a word.
Underworld Ascendant is a, let's see, immersive sim RPG sandbox where you're underground in a dungeon and you interact with lots of things. It kind of broke down halfway through.
All right, now do it with one word.
Ooh, I would say immersive.
I'd say simulation.
Ooh, simulation. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'd lean more towards the simulation.
Yeah. So the thing that I always keep in the back of my head is I just keep thinking of this as like, a dungeon simulation, right? Like,
That's true.
where,
Ooh, rewards.
Frequently.
so like another version of hardcore. Yeah, that's interesting.
Think about it.
Oh, I gotta write that.
No, there's not currently anything.
Be puzzle like no puzzle weapons.
Titan, I don't think any of us were on the DDO team during the Reaper mode development.
Yeah, we've
Yeah,
only been out
that's-
for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I was at DDO like 3 years ago, I think, so, yeah.
It's a recent person.
Will there be toggle switches in the options menu for things like object highlights for
Oh.
interactives?
Yeah, that's actually basically what I was just talking about,
Yep.
right? Is
Yes.
how much UI help are we going to give players? And
Yep.
I think hopefully the answer is some, and we'll let you turn it off. But we're still figuring out where the line is.
Yeah, there's a lot of us here that don't want a bunch of crap on screen. Like, I don't want the health bar to always be on screen because you don't always want to know how much health you have. And a lot of us have been coming to the conclusion that it's like, anytime we have like, oh, you look at an item and it tells you what name it is, someone in the room is like, can you add that as an option in the options menu to disable that? so yeah, rest assured, you have a voice in the room.
Sound you make when waking up. Yes, you are absolutely correct. Mortar was not designed to be played with UI disabled. I tried to do the same thing. There is a couple of them that have to be on, unfortunately. But yeah, they were a little lazy on some of their reactions and stuff. So it was really hard to tell, like, I'm in stealth or I'm not. or guy can see me but not really see me yet, and yeah, they really rely on that chevron quite a bit.
I really like that teleport spell John Racer threw out
You
there.
just see a random portal and
pretty
take a leap of faith.
I feel like Tim would like that. That would really play well into the
Yeah, all right.
interpretive spell
Yeah.
system, right?
We're writing that one down.
So maybe not a random place, but like we try to guess, and then maybe it's interesting, or maybe
Maybe it's in lava. I like that.
Like,
It's cool.
should you really trust a random portal you see? Maybe.
always.
We haven't played too much around with swimming and water interaction too much yet. So
Yeah.
diving,
Diving.
I wouldn't really expect that much of the swimming. Like, think about Half-Life 2 and how much swimming was in that. I don't think we're gonna get too much more in depth than that. It's just like, yeah, you're in water and you're swimming.
and I guess diving would be like, falling would stop, right?
I mean, like in first person, diving is like, okay, your arms will go like
Yeah.
that, I guess. I don't know.
Might be a bit
Because I really love, I think it's Far Cry 3, they do the thing where if you're jumping into water, if there's like enough distance between your jump point and the water, you actually do see your
That's 3. It's actually funnier in Primal if you do that, and because you're a caveman and haven't figured out
Have
swimming yet, you just start screaming, and your arms go like this.
That's amazing.
That game is out of the Far Cries. It's pretty underrated. I really enjoy it.
I don't know if you saw, they just delayed 5 by a month.
That's fine. That's
Oh, yeah,
fine.
no,
Yeah,
it's February.
they have to add. Can't say that.
Okay.
Dawn Razor, other parkour abilities. You can slide, depending on how deep the angle is of the floor that you're sliding on and what kind of surface it is. You can slide down it. I don't know. Definitely come up. Like, tell me any ideas for other parkour things because that would be awesome. But
You can
I think
slide.
just
You can mantle.
Yeah.
We should probably come back around on hurdle.
Hurdle.
hurdles,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
because
like mantle, but like go over.
like automatically without having to press.
And that way we can put in
Yeah.
Jersey barriers
Basically how
everywhere.
it works now. If you're holding forward,
Right.
we'll go up to a thing, go up, and then just keep going.
Yeah, but if you compare that to, there was a game, it was one of the Bethesda games, I think, where depending on where you're looking, if you're looking up and you run into a table that's about this height, he'll just automatically
Hold it.
slide right over
Yeah.
it.
Oh.
I mean, the thing that we've been talking about is not taking control away from the player. So that would be a situation where we don't want to just be like, okay, now you're locked into this sliding area.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you
But
take your hand off W, that's it, you're done.
Yeah.
You're
You can
done.
you can just be standing.
the theory and reality sometimes don't.
Yeah.
Okay, map question was answered.
Oh, was it?
You guys have, yeah, way
That's a
before.
good, that's a good point on the
But
wet
yes,
part.
you can make notes on your map. Will getting yourself wet swimming have negative consequences? Will it make sense to look for a place where one can avoid getting into water? Avoiding
Probably.
water for sure.
Probably. I never thought about the wet status effect, especially, so I've been playing Divinity 2
Alligators everywhere.
recently, and Divinity 2 has, they have like their full elemental system, and they have like status effects where you can be wet or soaked, or you can be cold or frozen, and if you're cold and you take more water damage, then you become frozen, and if you're wet and you take lightning damage, then you take way more damage. So that actually brings up a lot of ideas. We don't have tons of lightning stuff in the game, but maybe wet would give you like a resistance towards fire. So
Yeah, I was gonna say
I actually
that'd
kind of like that.
Trying to catch up with you.
Double jumping. It's not. Is it in anymore?
That's it.
Yeah, it's still in. We still got double jumping.
It's a skill, though. You have to have the skill.
Triple jumping.
You guys made me take out the triple
Lying.
jump because you guys were hitting the ceiling
The
every
triple
level.
jump got taken out because my 12-year-old son told you it was dumb.
I thought it was awesome.
You can like wall jump into a double jump. So it's like,
Yeah. And your double jump gets reset every wall you wall run on. So you can wall run, do a double jump, wall run again, do another double
Quest
jump.
logs, that's all still being hashed out. Immersion is everything.
Yes, we are building a quest system. There will be quests. You will have a quest log. You can see what quest you're currently on. I'm still debating what we want to do in terms of showing you previous quests that you've completed. I think it'd be really interesting to show them and then also show like how the world state changed after a quest is complete. But it's just a lot of data to keep track of and also just to display.
Yeah. I think at the very least, like showing it a bit like Skyrim, where it shows like, hey, you completed these and they're closed out, it would be like a good like starting point. Inventory, we're not gonna base that on weight.
We already lived that.
Encumbrance is annoying.
And we're not doing inventory Tetris. It's just squares with the icon of the thing in it.
Underwater areas. Hiccups.
We have right now. We have no. We don't have any thought of doing expansive underwater stuff.
Yeah, underwater is like I wouldn't expect anything interesting down there. And water, we're deciding to make it really dark under there because we're not going to spend lots of art time to make like underwater plants and all this stuff when we could be spending that art time to make, plants above water that look awesome.
Have you guys talked about the environmental alteration stuff at all? Is that something?
Nope.
I have no idea what we've talked about or what we're allowed to talk about. So we are trying to build a system where you can raise and lower the water level. So areas that are inaccessible normally, you can raise the water level and then swim to. So that's kind of the interesting stuff we're trying to do with water rather than making swimming and doing puzzles in the water and that kind of stuff. I'm sure we all remember in Deus Ex when there's a swimming skill and you could make like frogman builds and that's great, but there's like 2 levels of water in it, right? It's like we don't need to go super far down that road.
Right.
But
There's also a game about water.
Yeah, there's also the water level trope thing, which is the water level in games is always the worst level. It's always the worst level because in Mario, you learned how to jump and you learned how to land on enemies. And then you hit the water level and everything you learned is now out the window and now you're playing a totally different game that's not even fun.
You try to control a third-person character that's swimming. It always feels weird.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, we're first-person, so.
Lava, there are different types. I'm not sure where we've landed with lava at this point. Okay, one sentence with you and lava. In Underworld,
Underworld.
in Underworld Ascendant, we're not sure what we're doing with lava yet. There's my sentence.
I'm pretty sure.
Nemesis system, oh my god, I wish, but no.
Wouldn't that be
There
hilarious?
is sort of, it's not a direct like, oh, this guy doesn't like you, but there are consequences to your actions within quests that will manifest as enemies appearing.
It's on a faction level, it's not on an individual level. Food supply, is it possible to run out of food? Yes. Will it grow? No comment. It might not.
We'll see.
There's a plant system that we will prototyped that has been in and out like 4 or 5 times now. Right now it's in. So finish building it.
Yes, the DDO's admin fly ability was off the swim stat.
Yes, it was.
I don't even know if we have a fly command yet.
I love water too.
No, we have like the ghost camera, but I think the speed is fixed right now.
It's fixed right now.
And honestly, like, since there isn't a lot of swimming and water stuff in this game, swimming and water skills, I think we're pretty much going to throw those out the window, sadly. But, like, if there isn't a lot of interesting things to do in the water, who's going to want to spend a skill point on swimming?
The silver sapling is a respawning thing. What is the
quest log going to look like visually?
I have no idea.
I'm a big fan of diegetic UI, so personally what I would love to see is an area in Mark Hall where you walk in and there's like literally a book with all the quests you've done and you can flip the pages and see stuff. And maybe there's, I don't know, some other representation, trophies or that kind of thing. That's probably all way out of
And you just made some artist cry.
I would love that kind of stuff. So for me, that would be the ideal. I think what's more likely is it'll probably be UI that looks like a scroll or a book.
Arrows. The only arrows that I have as definites right now is a water arrow and an explosive arrow and a broadhead arrow. There are a whole bunch of others that, we could go down, but we're starting conservatively with those.
So saving right now, the sound you make when waking up, I love that name, is asking, is it save at any point or save points right now? Right now, I think we're doing, you can only save in the town center area, so like the quest
Save
hub
hub,
area, whatever you want to call it, the village or whatever.
It
Which
shoots bears.
there's a big reason we're doing that, and one of the biggest reasons is the technical thing, is that we don't want to save. We don't have to I don't have a ton of engineers to be writing down all this stuff that's
Like
like,
save state.
yeah, save state is now this big file, and this object was right here with this much velocity and all that. That's just, we're not that big of of a place.
Something I do want to do with arrows, and I tried to prototype this a while ago and it didn't work great, is I'd love for the arrows to be, basically just physics objects that are like attached to your bow, so you can go and set them on fire, and then you can shoot something.
We've thought about that, we thought about attaching the rope to it, all sorts of stuff.
Attaching glue to an arrow and then
Yep.
shooting it somewhere.
We've thought about all this, and the answer right now is no.
The answer right now is I'm gonna be here some Saturday night or something.
Yeah. I'm not saying never, but it's like, that was definitely one of the earlier goals with it. But right now, just, to get it in and get it going is like, we got the water arrow, let's something that can create a fire is the next one.
Yeah.
And everything else is sort of off the table at the moment. But if we come back and we come, how it is, if we do something cool, usually ends up in the game.
Right, and that's the thing, is I hit a technical limitation with it, and that's the reason it's not in the game right now.
Yeah.
And I haven't had time to go back to it.
Right.
Bear tip arrows. It's just like a bear.
Flat fingers. Core systems they are not simple and independent. They are all interconnected, just the way the real world is.
That's really like our design mantra here.
That's,
Yeah.
traps are mechanical and they work by mechanical means, and, they're not just some scripted event,
They are pushed by physics forces, you can block them, you can stop them,
hit them with a hammer, whatever.
they can hit you.
Which of course has put us in a place of like, well, now what does the thief do?
Ooh, I like that.
Can you kick enemies into spiked bear pits?
Only saving down and experience points for not saving. That's a good
Cool.
idea.
Pretty cool.
Oh man,
What?
that's a good idea. Like if you're doing hardcore mode, you could be like,
Only
yeah,
save
you
in
only.
town.
You can only save in town, and you get more experience points
Not
if you just
saving.
take the next mission and go.
Yeah, just keep going.
Oh man, it's so
Wow.
evil. It was like
Hardcore.
there was like some of the old games I was playing. There was an
That's kind of awesome.
evil thing that would give you 10 saves total,
Oh my
and you're
God.
like, I don't even know how many levels are in the game. Should I use my save?
Right.
It's so
That's
evil.
awesome.
So the problem that I have, I think, with kind of permadeath and hardcore modes and not saving and that sort of thing is it really discourages you from trying weird shit out and seeing
Sure.
what happens and
True.
experimenting. So
Maybe
that's
it's
another like
It's
sounds good on paper, but it's a fine line to walk.
well, again, if it's optional, then
Yeah, let them
Yeah,
do it.
come by up, right? If we're doing that's the baseline. I don't know.
What would be poisons?
Can you kick enemies into spike bear pits? We do not have spike bear pits at the moment. Snap, puppy.
No bears.
Any poison?
Status effects are still up in the air.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we did poison, I'd really want to go down like the poison cloud route more than dipping weapons in poison route.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think damage over time is super interesting.
No.
Something where
So like I'm just,
Leonise, if we had freezing stuff in right now, yes, that would work.
mhm.
we don't have specific character or archetypes, I guess. We're kind of planning around, roughly fighter, warrior, rogue, but as a player, you can take skills from everything, or one thing, or nothing, I guess. We really want you to kind of figure out what you like and build your character around that.
Sound you make when waking up. You're right, that is kind of an awesome name. I gotta come up with an acronym for you now.
What sound do you want to make when you wake up?
That's the noise Victor responded with.
That's very private.
My sound is, oh crap.
Oh, shit. Where we are at weapons break, armor breaks, named magic items, and do not break.
You were saying that they break differently though than Zelda.
Yes.
In Zelda, they're deleted when they break, but I think you guys
We
were
have a
talking
degrade system. A
about,
very simple one though.
Okay.
like, you can always swing it, but now it's a broken sword.
Right.
So,
So-
like,
So what he's getting at is if you have a long sword and you swing it and it breaks, it's now broken sword, which is like
Right.
actually our lowest tier of equipment, right? Like, femur, branch, broken sword, rusty dagger, right?
Yeah.
So like when you break your sword, it becomes broken sword, and it won't degrade past that, right? So we didn't want to put the player in a place where he was like completely useless, just mostly useless.
Did I miss anything?
Oh, they got the simian weapons.
Herbology?
Yeah.
Can you only harvest plants, or can you harvest animals? Oh my god.
Cannot harvest animals at the moment.
How expansive will the alchemy system be?
We're not really doing alchemy, right? So we're doing kind of a basic cooking system.
Yeah, so, yeah.
A bit of crafting through cooking.
Pick up that, that's the social weapon. We are not doing sentient weapons, or if there is one, that's another one of those Saturday night quests that it might happen. Normal things do break. Happens in my life all the time. Silence Arrow, yeah, we pushed this one around a little bit. Moss Arrow, that type of thing,
We have a different solution.
Yeah, we have other,
actually.
yeah.
It's, I find it more interesting. I don't think I want to spoil it.
Yeah,
No.
let's see.
Also, I can't remember it exactly, but it's like a silence aura kind of thing. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
It's in the stealth tree.
Yep,
Bags and key rings, I think just inventory and rune bag,
yep.
right?
There's some thought on, expanded bags, but
Oh, yeah.
that's, DLC or whatever.
Actually, I guess Tim is kind of just starting to work on keys, so there might end up being a key ring. I don't think I know.
Yes, we'll see.
Yeah, there will be keys. So like, yeah, I don't know. I would prefer a key ring because I hate games where like there's keys everywhere.
need
Because like
keys.
Divinity, the keys don't stack. So I literally have like 50 keys.
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, Fallout has that same
Annoying.
thing.
It's just a key ring object. I'd pay like $10 for that.
Right, they just sort into their own list.
Oh, we missed the swap place spell question from a
Oh, yeah.
while ago.
Oh, is that like I swap place with the AI that I'm looking?
Yeah, probably.
No,
interesting.
but we'll think about that.
Heat signature has a teleporter item that you can use that is basically that, and it is amazing.
Yeah,
You can do
okay.
stuff like slow motion, shoot a gun, switch places with a guy, and then he gets shot. Or sorry,
Yeah, he shoots you.
Yeah, remind
Yeah.
me to talk to you about an idea I had for slow time, by the way.
I posted about Heat Signature on the forums. I highly, highly, highly recommend that game. I think it embodies a lot of the same kind of goals of the kind of Looking Glass immersive sims. And
That person swap spell is in Divinity as well, which is awesome. Because you're like, oh, I have to get into the battle.
Montreux, no, we don't have a exploration hireling or drone or whatever. Possession, we do have mind control stuff, but you won't have like direct control.
It's more like they're on your team now, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Oh.
actually, similarly to that hireling AI question, there's not going to be like AI companions, but there are going to be NPCs in the world who are not hostile to you and might be helpful.
Or maybe it might not.
Okay.
No, is that a thing we talked about? Well,
Maybe.
That seems to be.
Will there be an exploration spell similar to the drone in Terra Nova?
No.
No. So sad.
Do your own exploring.
I'm going to use some of the submitted questions so I don't lose them. Will we bring back any of the classics from the original Underworld Magic items? So like the Fire Axe of Doom, the Axe of Fire Doom. Sorry.
So this is fresh on my mind because I really just did not the final list, but the first final list the other day, and instead of going with weapons that were already in that game, I took a different tact and went with items that were potentially from our world, right? So the dagger of Julius Caesar, or which don't ask me to pronounce, Karen or Werniran.
Whatever.
So I basically just went through, our world's mythology, and anything that seemed like it was cool and would have some ability that would be like ours, I kind of grabbed and turned it into our own flavor. And there is a couple of like nod, nod, wink, wink from Hardcore Fantasy. Yes, there is, spoilers, there is a black blade, because every game I make, I want to put the black blade in. But in all honesty, magic weapons, Tim and I, when we were putting this together earlier this week, decided to take like the 5th edition approach and went really stingy on magic weapons. So they're powerful, but they're rare.
Oh, Armageddon spell. I want that so bad. That's one of
A
those
flaming
things.
sword would set wooden objects on fire. Yes, it's on fire.
We have lock picking.
It's on the list.
Yeah, I think Tim's
The
also
bow
good with
will
that stuff.
switch in shot first.
Oh no.
That is not on the list, but that would make that cool.
Pretty hard to shoot a bow under a table, I think.
If we have to. All right, back to the submitted questions really quick. Any Easter eggs going into the game?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Of course.
We already get that.
I mean, it's a looking glass game. There's
Yeah.
going to be the basketball.
There'll be a basketball there. A 4-5-1 will, I'm sure, show up somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And I've already got one in there. Not telling.
Actually, that music for combat question, I think, is also related to something that's in the submitted question.
Yeah, the ambience. We
Oh.
sort of tackled it before.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
But right, there won't be separate
There's no combat music.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it as ambient as possible.
Yes, the music will be the sound of your blades.
Singing as it's cutting through the flesh of whatever.
They have flesh. Or do we have any plans for remaking the previous games in Unity?
No.
No.
Those games already got made.
But if you look on the forums, I think someone posted there's a guy who's making a tool that converts, I think it's Underworld 1 and 2 and maybe Shock 1 levels into Unity meshes.
It's out there.
Well,
You just have to look.
No, it's not just meshes. You can actually start playing the
Yeah,
game.
Oh,
I'm
really?
pretty
I
sure
thought
you
it
can
was
play the whole game.
No, it's like you can start playing the game. It's like the guy is working on it. Oh, he's got a lot to do because it's a big game. Even for 1992, that game had a lot of stuff. Like
Really ambitious.
comparing it to everything else that came out at the time, that game had 1,000 more features than other games. So, shoot, even comparing it to games that come out now.
We don't any sophisticated physics-based sound simulation.
We were building this occlusion and obstruction system that took into account the materials of items that were, or the materials of objects between you and a sound source. So like wood would deafen sounds less than stone and so on. But it wasn't really that noticeable. I don't know. The thing that I've been thinking about a lot is how do you do audio obstruction in like kind of winding tunnels and kind of cave-like environments. I'd really like to do something where we do obstruction by like using the pathing system to see if there's a route between the sound and you, but all that stuff is super expensive on the CPU, so it's unclear where we're gonna net out there.
Do we have invisible walls?
No.
No.
We hate it.
That's another looking glass. No.
The only way we would ever have an invisible wall is if there was a spell that was an invisible wall. Like,
It's the only way.
the only time we run into invisible walls in our levels right now is because somebody made a bad collider.
There's a little of that.
Allow
Yes, there
mod
is.
support.
Oh, I'd love to allow mod support.
Ooh.
I don't think at the initial launch we're gonna support it, sadly. But I want to in one of the updates or DLCs. I wouldn't make people pay for the mod
Yeah.
support, but you know, like in like update 3 or something, because I mean mods are awesome. And also I've never made a game where you're allowed to make mods in Unity, so like that'll be a fun learning experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we are supporting like Steam Cloud saves and that sort of stuff. So we're sort of tied into their ecosystem. We could probably do some workshop support or something, but it's not nailed down.
Item stats going to be hidden or description based?
So we were actually just earlier talking about this. Stats, I hate showing stats. Description, I don't mind doing description. Yeah, count me in that group that doesn't like to expose numbers too much.
Yeah, so the original Ultima Underworld had a stat screen, right? And they actually, I guess nobody wanted to have the stat screen, and they were told to. I think it was like a publisher concern or something about it being an RPG and not showing stats. So I think that was actually the only reason that game had stats exposed to the player. So that's one of those things where, like, I mean, I'd prefer it if there was 0 freaking numbers in the entire game. Like the count of arrows is probably the one spot where I'd say, okay, I'll probably put a number there.
Dolnar, challenge accepted.
Yeah,
Gonna test our walls.
Country wall.
a bunch of us are XQA, so
Yeah.
good luck.
Good luck with that.
We look forward to seeing that.
I forgot that Steam Audio exists. At the time that it was released, it didn't support like Unreal, Wise, Fmod. There was a pretty big list of like you had to be using it for pretty specific stuff for it to be worthwhile. I'm not sure where it's at these days. That is actually something I should check up on. I've never really heard of anyone using it. I don't know how good it is.
Koshiro, stat screen. You are big and strong.
That's good.
I can't tell you how okay with that I would be. Like, you know, one of the things that I have been enjoying with some of the sandboxy games that are out there, you know, 'cause, I mean, really like Mordor and Assassin's Creed and all that. I mean, those are really modern RPGs on some level, right? And it's like, they've taken all that stuff out. They've just taken it all out, right? They've even taken itemization out for the most part. And I'll be honest, as a gamer, I don't really miss the fiddly bits, but each to their own, I guess. But yes, I hate seeing numbers.
So Don's related question is, are we hiding numbers and using words to replace
Yes,
it?
I'm perfectly fine with using cool descripting words, yes. No, 505 has been freaking awesome.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so true.
I can't say that more. They have been, they've just been fantastic.
Super supportive.
Isn't Darkflame in the chat?
Yes.
We might even say they've been a little bit fanboyish.
Will aspects of gameplay be artificially gated by numbers? What
No.
does that mean?
Like level requirements and stuff like that.
No.
Okay.
No, we're not gonna have any kind of, we're gonna have, you know, on the original Ultima, you could go down to the bottom levels and nothing would stop you. I'm pretty sure we're gonna take the same, like, oh yeah, you can screw yourself if you want, because like, you know, when you die in the game, it's not game over. You get sent, I think you get sent back to the town for the most part. So, you know, you can kind of
But-
learn from like, oh, maybe I can't win that fight.
Right, so to clear that, so somebody brought up like a levitate spell. So is it gated by a single thing? No. Is there places that you might not be able to get to? Yeah. Will it be critical path? No. I mean, there's always places that you can't get to is
Yeah.
kind of arbitrary
Yeah.
because
Because you can usually figure something
the
out.
will, there's a way.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen people do things that,
We're like,
yeah,
oh, okay,
using boxes as elevators and all sorts of weird stuff.
it's great.
I second Kashiro, but would extend to automatically grab a matching GIF from Giphy matching the current stat. That's amazing. So instead of I'm big and strong, it just goes and grabs a big and strong
Yeah.
GIF.
It's you.
Yes.
Pretty awesome.
In my experience, Giphy is very bad at matching GIFs to what
Well,
That's
which will
even
make
better.
it even more hilarious.
Yeah.
I guess squirrels.
We save that to when we do a multiplayer game.
we did we switched to Slack here at the office as our like
Mm-hmm.
chit-chatting program, and it has Giphy support, which I love. One of my favorite things. I think I added that day one.
Okay, so the game being completely preset or any aspects be procedural for different gameplay experience. So I'd say like
Yes.
I wouldn't really call it procedural. I don't know. It's kind of one of those. So in Payday 2, there's certain levels where walls will be there and they won't be there, and cameras will be there and they won't be there. I think it's kind of like that. Is that some elements can be randomly either there or not, which can mess up the scenario depending on what it is. So it's a bit different every time you jump in.
We have the ability to swap AI, swap any object.
Mhm.
We have the ability to swap out quests. So, I mean, we have the ability to go really, really random, but what we've already kind of discovered is really, really random doesn't work very well. So we've pulled that back a little bit, but it's not static.
Any plans for DLC?
Of course, we want to
Of
do
course.
DLC. That'd be
Uh,
great.
So the MC Escher Surrealist level, which was Constantine's Manor, which was actually done by Nate Wells when he was level designer.
Just talking about
We were just talking about it the other day. Currently, I haven't seen those guys do anything quite like that.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, so I cut my teeth at Looking Glass, and, I should probably say the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
same
sorry.
question.
It won't be there.
It's an honor to talk to people who've worked at Blue Sky Looking Glass. Has the culture from LGS carried over to other side? And in other ways, has it changed? So, yes, the philosophy is definitely the same here as it was at Looking Glass, and the fearlessness has infected the office too. Like, you don't see too many people here not trying to push the envelope, even when asked not to. But I also think, in all honesty, I think that some of us that came out of the MMO experience have brought some things to the table that has kind of helped with the Looking Glass vibe. And that's like, we don't understand what downtime is, right? Like, because we lived on a 3-month cadence, right? So like everybody that is here that's came from the MMOs, we just kind of crank on our, what needs to be done. Which I'll be honest, working on other studios isn't completely common. So the merging of those two has, had some surprising results.
I will say one difference that I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that Looking Glass was doing a lot of innovation technically, right? With, Underworld being like the first-person RPG and all the great crazy text.
First-person game. You hear that, John Romero? It's the first-person game.
You're in the stream right now.
And we're just not as interested in innovating in graphics and rendering techniques. Like, obviously, we're going to have stuff that looks really cool, but that competing in that space is not something that we're gunning for. We'd rather innovate in gameplay and systems design.
Yeah, I mean, when we first opened the shop, one of the things that we were talking about was looking back on those old titles, looking at where the industry was, and sort of having this realization that And some of this stuff, the envelope just hasn't been pushed. It sort of got stopped getting pushed around 2000, you know, like, so we're pushing. I mean, that's what we're doing. It's like we really wanted to push the simulation aspects of, you know, of the world instead of it just being these 12 things in the world are the things that are going to have, you know, do cool stuff, right?
Are we going for a lot of dialogue, or is the game fairly minimalistic in terms of verbal interactions?
I'd say more towards minimalistic. Joe can speak more to that, but for the gist of it, I think that about sums it up. So don't expect like tons and tons of dialogue trees. Yeah. Sorry.
Flat fingers, is most gameplay testing being done with controller or mouse keyboard? Wondering if this makes a difference on how movement feels on the PC. So we do both. Joe Fielder, creative director, he's a console jockey, so he's always using a controller, and people like me, there's no way you can't get the keyboard and mouse out of my hands. So I think both have been getting hit pretty hard. The only time I use a controller, honestly, is if I'm shooting video, because it does do a better job at that.
Yeah, you guys get the nice smooth.
Turn.
Right.
Gonna try and knock out some more submitted
yeah,
questions.
get
There
more
aren't
of
that
those
many
done.
left, so don't
Okay.
worry.
Ton of time.
There was this question about how the character's presence is in the environment, or rather their body shape. This is a question about, are they a cone, a cylinder, or a snowman?
So I guess I can explain this. So the way the character works is, for the most part, he's a capsule. And for the combat and damage, such as getting shot at by arrows and getting swords swung at you, we have individual colliders for the arms and upper arms, torso, and down below the leg. So if you get shot at by an arrow that would hit your capsule, but it actually goes through you, then it won't hit you because it hit this area. So that's how that works. So for the majority of the player and all the enemies are capsules. But yeah, for combat interactions and stuff like arrows and swords, that's through the individual colliders. I can show a picture of that at some point on the forums, because
Good idea.
it's like a picture is kind of worth all those words.
Yeah, we're gonna be I'm gonna be posting, I should say, a recap of this roundtable on our forums in case you missed it. And then it'll be included in our next newsletter, just so everyone's caught up.
Ooh, we can add the pictures there.
Yes, exactly. What do we anticipate the system requirements for the game to be?
So we don't really have those locked down yet. We have some numbers on Steam right now. Those are totally ballpark. I mean, if you guys want, I can tell you my system specs of my work machine. I mean, I don't know. We really can't give any like really good numbers yet, because we still have more features to add into the game, and we still have to do a bunch of, more performance passes and stuff like that. So it's hard to narrow down exactly where that's going to land.
Is there locational damage?
Yes.
You can chop
There
up
is.
arms?
There's head and body though.
It's like head, body, and arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't have decapitation.
Yeah, there's no decapitation,
Darn.
sadly.
Can you switch between first and third person? No, there's no third person.
It's just you,
We are
all the
first
time.
person only.
You are always completely immersed.
Yes, no way to leave.
Oh, you mean heal specific body parts?
Yeah.
No. The player has one
You have
like
one body?
health bar, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. There's no Metal Gear Solid thing where you have to like
Gotta
put
patch
stints
myself.
on. That'd be so cool, but I don't know.
I find it generally more frustrating than not.
Okay. It is
A
a
lot of
little.
memories of playing Daisy, breaking my leg, and having to walk 40 minutes.
Looking for his
Oh,
well,
yeah. I admit that
This is fun.
in Fallout it's a little weird, because Fallout has the location-based damage, but you never really notice it. You're like, oh,
Well, it's
that's
because
fine.
as soon as you take damage, you just sort of like heal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have so many stim packs. Doesn't really
And you can heal specific parts in
Yeah.
Fallout,
Right,
but
but
yeah,
it
I
doesn't
don't
matter.
care in that game.
Okay, another question is, and I guess this would be for each of you, what has been the most challenging factor in designing this game? And is there anything from the 90s that is being realized in this game now?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
Challenging factor.
Well, if you guys have an answer. Or for you personally, like what has been the hardest thing to make?
Hardest thing?
Yeah.
Oh, freaking AI.
That's your whole answer. Just AI, period.
Just AI.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just, and it's not that it's hard, it's just that it's time consuming. It's just, you know, a
Yeah.
lot of tuning,
Mhm.
a lot of 2 steps back.
Right.
I'd say getting players to learn the stuff that other games have been making them unlearn, such as doors are destructible and you can
Yeah.
light them on fire. Like we were showing off one of the earlier builds at a Boston Festival of Indie Games, and I was noticing that every single player is like, oh, this door is locked, walks away. That's all.
Yeah.
And the door is made of this flimsy wood, and you can hit it with
You
the
can
sword
shake it.
3 times to bust it into pieces, or you can light it on fire, or, you know, there's several ways to open
Gravity
doors.
to throw it open.
So-
And I've actually wondered, like, with the door specifically, just as a tangent, it's like, should we actually at the earliest stage just have those really, really flimsy, like
It's
one
maybe.
swing?
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
It's part of the
Right.
training.
Yeah.
Oh, is
It's
this
like,
that's a good idea, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely like the training. I feel like we're gonna have to go back and be like, oh yeah, that's right. Games in the last 10 years have been teaching players that you can't walk off of cliffs and stuff.
healing's done with food, correct?
Yeah, right now it's food. Food and I think a bit of spells.
I'm not sure if there's a heal spell at this point.
Maybe
I haven't
not.
seen
I
one.
think it's planned.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That aim to make players smarter. Yeah.
The hardest thing for
We
me
need
to
more
build-
games to aim to build make play size. Yes.
Joe and I have been talking about how we want the quests to kind of tie into a bigger narrative and kind of have like a nice ebb and flow of
Right.
difficulty, and have, as you're completing missions, having factions react to that and kind of generating new missions based on that information. It's just a huge, complicated system that I've been struggling with, but it's getting really interesting.
Nice.
I don't know if that's a thing from the 90s or not, but that's the second half of that question, I think.
Well, it's related to like,
No.
yeah, narrative and how the design has
I'm
changed.
sure someone was trying to do
Mhm.
generative narrative design in the 90s too, but I don't know any.
Well-
Not that many.
Yeah.
Not that many. We were still in the age of, you know, hey, we actually made a corridor, isn't that awesome?
Walk down the hallway, no lag.
We rendered a human face. Non-bipedal creatures, yes.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Too many.
Yeah, this is a bunch.
What is the ballsiest thing we're trying to do at this game?
Ooh.
Oh.
God,
That's a good question.
Making a game in 2017 and competing in the game market.
Yeah.
Crazy. It doesn't matter how you look.
With a budget of less than $100 million. Because Skyrim is probably like a $200 million game. Yeah.
Brutal side quests for higher challenge.
Yeah, actually, that's another thing that we've been talking about with the quest system is having, well, right now we're calling them side bounties. I don't think that's the final name, but, you know, basically optional challenges that kind of force you to play maybe a little bit differently or kind of think a little bit harder about different solutions to problems. This actually, again, comes back to Heat Signature, which I've been playing a lot, where they have, you know, specific missions where you, what are some of the options? You can leave no witnesses, or you have to kill everybody, or you can't kill anybody. They have, I don't know, I think a half dozen kind of variants that increase your reward for missions, but also make them a lot harder. I don't know what he means by brutal side quests. They will be
Probably just like,
harder.
really difficult to do. Yeah.
We should probably get more questions
Yeah, we're
through there.
We're running out of time, so we're taking the last few questions.
How are you preventing problems from being too open-ended? Are we?
We don't.
I don't think we are.
You can solve it. You solved it. Memora, please.
I think tomorrow we're doing.
That's brainstorm.
Yes, brainstorm.
Oh, that's the brainstorm.
Yeah, those are how it's
Well, the
Joe-
classic answer, soon.
Soon.
We're not talking about that right
Yeah.
Not for a while, unfortunately. I feel like I missed something. Oh, the crowdfunding question. What has crowdfunding allowed you to do that you wouldn't have been able to do with a traditional publisher?
It allowed us to prototype for longer than
Mm-hmm.
a publisher would have gotten more. They would have gotten impatient, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
It also, I mean, one of the things with the Kickstarter, and the reason this has taken what it has is, we were starting a company at the same time we were trying to start our first game, and just basically doing, those two things at the same exact time was daunting. And, once everything kind of settled down, now we were able to finally, put this thing to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Soon, right? Trademark, absolutely, Dolnar.
Yep.
Alright, so my environmental sound design we sort of tackled earlier, but basically very ambient. We actually have to wrap up now, so thanks again for joining us, everybody.
Yeah.
This will be posted on YouTube, so if you missed it, don't worry. Or you'll be seeing it now, actually, if you had missed it. Thanks for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll leave it open for just a little bit as we all filter out. Bye. Aww. See ya.
All right.